What a privilege we have to worship the Lord together this morning. Let me just pray before we start this message. Lord, we thank you because you have given us your word. You have given us your own words. And you have shown us the way to live a good, fruitful, blessed, thankful, and grateful life, Lord. You have rescued us from so much evil. You have rescued us from ourselves. So, Lord, we pray this morning that this time and pull on our hearts, Lord, to worship you. In your name, amen. So a few weeks ago, Brad introduced us to the 10 Commandments, and he said we would be studying the 10 Commandments. So we are going to look at Commandments 1 and 2 this morning. But here's a reminder, because Brad said that we should memorize these, right? So we'll look at the 10 Commandments really quick. Number 1, you shall have no other gods. You shall not make any idols. You shall not misuse the Lord's name. Keep the Sabbath day holy for the Lord. Honor your father and mother. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not give false testimony. You shall not covet anything that belongs to your neighbor. Thank you. So let's read our passage this morning. Only 6 verses, starting in chapter 20. And God spoke all these words. These are the only words we have in the Bible that God wrote with his own hand and finger on the tablets that he gave to Moses. Okay? All the Bible is inspired, but these are special words that he wrote for his people. I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself an image in the form of anything in heaven above, or on the earth beneath, or in the waters below. You shall not bow down to them or worship them. For I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, punishing the children for the sin of the parents to the 3rd and 4th generation of those who hate me, but showing love to 1,000 generations of those who love me and keep my commandments. So here it begins. God is about to give them the law in the first 2 verses. He's about to tell them what they should do or what should not do. And what is the first thing that he tells them before he even starts to give them the law? What is the first thing he says? He reminds them that he rescued them from slavery. He reminds them of what he already did for them. He reminds them that they used to be slaves in Egypt, but he had the power to free them from their former master, Pharaoh. There are 2 reasons why this is important that I can see. The first one is he has legitimacy, the right, the power, the authority to command them and their obedience. He is worthy to be their God. He saved them. He rescued them, and so he can claim, he can say, I am your God. And another reason this is important is that he does not give them these commands so that they can be freed from slavery. They are already freed. They are already saved. He doesn't say, follow all of these and then I will let you come out of Egypt. He says, I brought you out of Egypt. You're free. Now, follow these laws. Following these commandments will not save you if you follow them all to the letter or think you do. They can only lead to a good, orderly life. There is evidence that children who learn the 10 Commandments have more orderly lives. I was trying to look this up. I didn't spend much time on it. I couldn't find it. Why? Because right now, Texas, the state of Texas in the United States, wants to pass a law to put the 10 Commandments in every school to help the behavior of their children because they think it will help their behavior. So all of the searches are about Texas law coming out. I didn't know about this, but that's how I found out. We need these laws to help us make good decisions and live good and orderly lives. And this is true freedom. What is freedom? He freed them from Egypt. What is freedom? He freed them, but then he's asking them to do these things. So, if you look at the definition in dictionaries, almost all of them follow our heart and say that it's the ability to do whatever you want without any authority or control telling you what to do. That's the definitions I found. But that's not how God views freedom. We think we can do whatever we want, but really we can't. There's laws, even today for us now. Try to do whatever you want and take that car from the Mercedes store and find out what happens to you. There are boundaries on everybody's freedom, right? So what is true freedom? It is the ability to do what you ought or should do. True freedom is being able to do what you should do. If you are in jail, you can't go out and work and take care of your family, everything. You're stuck in jail. Once you're freed from jail, you have the ability to do all kinds of things. We trust you with the ability to do what you should do within the boundaries of the law. So what should we do? This is what we're going to look at this morning. We're going to look at the first 2 commandments. The first commandment is, you shall have no other gods before me. In other words, you shall worship no one else except me. God, of course, not me. Now remember, Israel came out of Egypt where there were many gods. If you grew up there and you wanted to eat well and have good, rich plants for food, maybe you would call on Tehmut. He could help you with the heat and the rain. Okay? We have a few pictures here. I didn't find all of them, but perhaps you wanted to be recognized for your great knowledge and deep wisdom, or you wanted to succeed at your exams. Well, you could call up Toph. Okay, the scribe over there. He's the god of all scribes and knowledge and learning. Or maybe you like the finer things in life. Delicious wine, beautiful girls, or perhaps you want to be beautiful. Well, you could call on Hathor, goddess of beauty and love and all that is pleasure. She's the reason why the Egyptians worshipped cats. Okay, cats, I guess, were supposed to be refined. Or maybe you wanted to excel in architecture and sculpture, or maybe just get your bathroom sink to work to stop leaking. Pray to Ptah, the god of artisans. You see, the Egyptians weren't so different from us today. They needed certain things, and they worshipped whoever or whatever would give it to them. We still want some of those things today. Skill, status, money, beauty, approval. We just take out all of the pictures of the gods, right? And we just go straight to those things. So we think we are safe. We're not worshiping idols. We just want things that are nice, that we want. So what is it that we worship? Let me say that anything that you worship really becomes an idol. It becomes a god for you. So what is worship exactly? And of course, pushed to the extreme, when it takes the place of God. You can take those off. Thank you. They're not good. Worship is reverent love, and this is the first definition that just came up when I put it on. Worship is reverent is like respectful, love and devotion given to some God. It's admiration. It can be ceremonies or other forms by which this love is expressed. This morning we had a ceremony of singing in which we expressed our devotion, our love to our God. It's to declare the greatness of something. So, these are my words, worship is anything you love, cherish, feel like you need, something you admire. It gets you excited, and it's what your heart wants. It's something that you will sacrifice for. Your time or your money. Here's a few examples of modern worship. These are things that we worship that are outside of myself. What are the greatest temples of worship in France? Do you know? I mean in size. What is the biggest temple of worship in France? A soccer stadium. You don't think so? Look at the ceremony that goes around it. Look at how they chant. I've never been actually to the stadium of Vélodrome, but somebody tells me the ambiance. Oh, it's like everybody's there. It's electric. I will stand hours in line to get into that stadium. I will sacrifice my whole afternoon. I will fight other supporters because I identify with my team. If my team doesn't win, I'm not happy. But if they do, I can talk about it for days. It makes my week or breaks it, right? And I will go to the ceremony faithfully, or I'll watch it on TV. That's a form of worship. What about a girl who meets a boy? Oh, he's so wonderful. He will meet all of my needs and take care of me and love me. He will fix all my problems. I will no longer be alone, and someone will understand me completely. And I will never feel lonely again. Before I was married, I remember a married woman saying, I felt really lonely today. And I thought that would never happen once you're married. Marriage doesn't fix all those things. Actually, marriage reveals your problems, right? Or, more directly, we worship ourselves. Our own success, or excellence, or importance. I will practice, study, work very hard so that I can become someone important, respected, honored. Or maybe I just want to feel powerful and safe because I have a lot of money to keep me powerful and safe. I want to control my life. The thing we all tend to worship, really, is ourselves. In fact, to live, I think, is to worship something. If you truly fall in complete apathy and you don't care about anything, what happens? You die. Babies who receive no love die. If we have nothing that we live for, why live? So who or what do you worship? This is the first commandment. It's also the one I'm going to spend the most time on. But it is also the most important commandment of all of them. It's the beginning, the foundation for all the other commandments. All the other commandments are built on this one. Martin Luther said every violation of the 10 commandments is a violation of the first commandment. Jesus said, so here you can see all the commandments. And Jesus said, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind. That is the greatest commandment, right? You shall have no other gods except him. You shall love him with all your soul, mind. If you love him, you will keep the Sabbath day holy for him. You will set aside a day for him. You will honor your father and your mother, who are representations in a sense of who God is for you. Besides, he chose them for you. If you love him, you will love those that he created, that he loves. You will love your neighbor as yourself, and you will follow all of the rest of these. In fact, if we look into Colossians 3, he says, put to death anything that comes from sinful desires. Get rid of sexual sins and impure acts. Don't let your feelings get out of control. Remove from your life all evil desires. Stop always wanting more and more. You might as well be worshiping statues of gods. It's the same thing. If you always want more and more, if you're never satisfied, you have evil desires, you want things that you're not supposed to have, that are not good for you, you might as well be worshiping statues of gods. God's anger is going to come because of these. That's the way you lived at one time in your life. But now here are the kinds of things you must also get rid of. You must get rid of anger, rage, hate, and lies. Let no dirty words come out of your mouths. Don't lie to one another. I think he's covered most of the 10 Commandments in here, if you look at it. So as you can see, anything we worship, we do for ourselves, for our comfort, our pleasure, or for others to approve of us. That's our natural tendency. We want to stay in control of the world and stay in control of things. We all worship things for ourselves because we think they will fill us. We think they will give us peace, satisfaction, instead of finding those things in God. Here's a quote I was maybe not going to share, but I'll share it. It's a little difficult maybe, but it's by Harold Best. He says, worship is the continuous, constantly, always, outpouring, it pours out of me, of all that I am, all that I do, and all that I can ever become for a chosen God. Or, he also says, or a choosing God, because God chooses us, if he's the one we're worshiping. So that is commandment number 1. You shall have no other gods before me. All of those things, they're no good. You shall not make for yourself an image in the form of anything in heaven above, or on the earth beneath, or in the waters below. You shall not bow down to them or worship them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God. Let's start with that. We have already seen many examples of images, idols, or gods that we can worship instead of God. So I won't repeat that part here, but it applies. Anything that you seek or sacrifice for other than God becomes another image or another idol or another god that you worship. But what about making images of the true God himself? Well, Israel tried this. Before Moses even came down the mountain with the 10 tablets, the 10 commandments, the 2 tablets. Okay? Moses comes down and they made an image of a golden calf in the form of a golden calf. Why a calf? In those times, the calf represented strength. The bull is what helped you pull the plow. They were trying to represent a strong God. Some people think they just made another idol instead of worshiping God, but They were trying to represent who God is. They remembered that he took them out of Egypt. Israel was difficult and whiny and everything, but they still realized that God, Yahweh, had saved them. We know this because once they made it, they said, this is your God, Israel, who brought you up out of Egypt. Here he is. Worship him. What's the problem with this? They're trying to worship God. They need to see him a little bit. All the other gods have a picture or an image, right? Well, when we try to make an image of God, we reduce him. We leave out more than what we are saying, more than what we say. He's too wonderful, too complex, has too many facets to be represented by an image. It turns our attention away from the majesty, the infinity of who he is. And then he says, "For I am a jealous God, punishing the children for the sin of the parents, to the third and the fourth generation of those who hate me, but showing love to 1,000 generations of those who love me and keep my commandments." For some sins, this is very obvious. If your grandparent was an alcoholic, you know how their sin punished your parents and yourself a little bit. If your parents worshipped status and glory and wasted all their money buying nice cars and fine things, then getting into debt up into here, well, then you also perhaps have experienced this, how their sin punished you. We are influenced by the sins of our parents. We are influenced by their idols because we imitate our parents. But God will show love and mercy to all generations that love him and keep his commandments. Now I would like to just invite you to take a few minutes and examine your heart. Is there any other God in your life right now? Anything that you need to turn away from? Anything that pulls your heart more than God? And I'll give you a few questions to help. I know I certainly had some idols that I needed to throw away and sacrifice to God. Here's a few questions to help you know what your heart really wants or desires. On what do you spend your money? If you have a little bit of extra money, what do you spend it on? Or maybe do you try to keep it all because you need it to feel safe? You need as much as possible. What must happen for your day to go well? What is your primary source of blessing? If this doesn't go through or follow through like I planned it, I get all upset. What makes you feel confident about the future? Or what do you lose sleep over? What do you do with your free time? What gives you peace and joy? What would your spouse say that you worship? You can ask them. Who or what would your children say that you love most? And what do you sacrifice for? whatever that is, perhaps you need to sacrifice it for God. I realized that I have greed. I want to feed my pleasure. I would eat chocolate or sugar. All kinds of things that I just think, I need these to feel good. So I sacrificed eating for a little while. And I've been sacrificing sugar until today. It's kind of hard because it's what your heart pulls for. I cheated once. I went in the morning to work at another company for them. They offered coffee. And without thinking, I took a sugar. And I was like, oh, no. Everybody saw me take the sugar. I can't put it back. That would be disgusting. So I put it in and I drank it anyways. I probably shouldn't have done that. It's hard. In that case, maybe my idol was more the approval of others. I probably could have just thrown it in the trash discreetly or something without anybody seeing. What do you need to sacrifice so that God is your only God, the only God that you worship this morning? You shall have no other gods before me. He is the only one who deserves our worship. He rescued us from slavery, from sin, so that we can do what we ought to do. He saved us through his death on the cross, and then he struck down death itself, just like he struck down Pharaoh in the Red Sea many years ago. And today he invites you to a new life, a new freedom where you can do what you ought to do and not what your heart pulls you to do. He will actually replace your heart and give you a new heart so that you can love him if you submit to him and give your life to him. A life of peace with God and man. And let me just close with this prayer. This verse is from Exodus chapter 33, just a few chapters later. The people again have complained, and God says, I'm tired of this people. We'll just start over. We'll wipe them all out, and Moses will start again with you. And Moses comes and he pleads for this people. He says, if you are pleased with me, teach me more about yourself. Then I can know you, and I can continue to please you. Remember that this nation is your people. Please, Lord, we need your help. Teach us, and then we can know you. Help us to follow you. And the Lord replied, I will go with you. And I will give you rest.